Where was I September 11th, 2001? I was in my classroom with my scholars.
I was actually in my classroom at the time. I was teaching 6th grade in Conroe, Texas.
I remember that it was my sophomore year in college. I graduated in the year 2000.
I was actually a principal in Boulder, Colorado.
I was actually at home getting ready to go to work.
I was in my elementary library when a teacher came in from the computer lab next door and said her husband had just called and said something happened in New York.
Another student looked across from me and said, "Hey, did you hear what happened to the Twin Towers?"
And I can remember seeing the chaos and thinking to myself, is this a TV show or am I watching a movie or something? Because none of it seemed real. I've never seen anything like that before, and there was no way for my brain to comprehend something like that happening, in the United States.
As shocked as I was, like the rest of the nation that day, I never expected to have a personal connection. But that night I found out that 2 professional colleagues I had worked with at National Geographic were on the Pentagon plane.
And one of my students, I saw on his face that he was so upset. And I said, "Jacob, what's wrong?" And he said, "My mom was supposed to be going to New York City today on an airplane."
I knew Ann and Joe very well and had pictures of them in my photo albums, and it made the tragedy more real.
What I remember the most about that day was just this overwhelming sadness that seemed to just pervade through everything.
And other than shock and awe, just watching the news and not believing that could happen, and then hearing about the other planes and things that went on as the day went around, was a rather confusing time.
One of the things that struck me the most was the next day at school. One of my professors, Dr. Galinsky, of course, wanted to address it because pretty much, that's what everyone was talking about.
And we really kind of went into a crisis mode. And I remember making announcements over the intercom, just talking to students that we were aware of the big impacts that were going around, and we had canceled events, and we're making provisions because we knew that in the days following that there'd be a lot of changes.
I remember him saying that the goal of terrorism is to completely disrupt our lives. And I was thinking about that, I'm like, wow, that's pretty profound. So what he said was, we're going to just continue on with class like we would normally would, because we're not going to let these terrorists disrupt our lives.
I'm happy that my family was, there for me when I was still at an impressionable age. And they told me everything was going to be okay, and everything was okay for that day.
And I just remember thinking, from this moment forward, the entire world has changed and is never going to be the same. And here we are 20 years later, and sure enough, the entire world has changed and nothing's the same.
Where was I on that day? I was with my scholars, where I needed to be. And I'm so thankful that I was.